Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial net center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzon. Here's what's coming up on the program right now. I want it in 48 hours. President Bola Tinubu directs the Minister of Finance to urgently come up with a new minimum wage template following Labour's recent economic crippling national strike action. Senate raises concern over the shutting down of the national grid. It describes action as economic sabotage following Labour strike on Monday. Let's get things off with an update concerning Heritage Bank, whose license was revoked 2 days ago, and this concerns everyone who is a customer of that defunct bank. We can tell you that the managing director of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, Mr. Bello Hassan, has given a snapshot of the bank's total deposit at Heritage Bank, which stands at 650 billion naira, while its loan portfolio is pegged at over 700 billion naira. Mr. Bello assures that the NDIC looks forward to ensuring that loans repayment happens within the next 6 months. It says all depositors are currently being verified for onward payment of insured benefit of 5 million naira, while depositors with insured deposit of above 5 million naira will be paid upon the sale of the assets of the bank. Mr. Hassan notes that the payment for all affected depositors will commence before the end of this week. According to the NDIC, Heritage Bank has about 116 branches nationwide, and total depositors at the bank stood at 2.3 million, with 90% of them having less than 5 million naira in their bank accounts. And so that's the latest for those of you who were banking with Heritage Bank. It's now a defunct bank. So no cause for alarm according to the NDIC. So verification is on and all that will be following through. But let's move on to other things. Now to that crippling effect of the strike by organized labor. It was a subject of contemplation in the Red Chamber, with senators raising concern over the shutdown of the national grid and disruption of Hajj flights as a result of the strike declared by organized labor. The president of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, indicated this during a plenary on Tuesday, just as he halted further debate on the industrial action, but appreciated organized labor for going back to the negotiation table.
In the early hours of Tuesday morning, the National Assembly gates came under lock and key, halting vehicles from entry. Workers were compelled on day 2 of the strike to stay away as a mild drama ensued. It also caused a postponement of plenary in the House of Representatives as the Speaker left the National Assembly complex. However, senators were not deterred as the lawmakers, including Senator Abdul Nengi, who was recently recalled from suspension, arrives for the resumption of plenary. A substantial number of senators are already in the chamber, and expectedly, the industrial action by the organized labor came under focus as lawmakers advanced their contributions.
Let us see what we can do in persuading both labor and the federal government in looking at between 75 and 90,000 naira. And every party should stop at that, because if they postpone for 1 week and nothing is doing, look at pulling down national grid. Mr. President, is not an easy job. That national grid might take another 3-4 days to come up, because shutting down a national grid, starting it up is a problem.
As we deal with the minimum wage, Mr. President, we should also be thinking of those who have no employment at all.
As the news of the suspension filtered in, the president of the Senate holds further debate on the matter, expressing worry over underlying implications.
If we want to debate, we'll begin to question a lot of things. For instance, shutting down national grid could amount to economic sabotage. Stopping children from taking WAEC means that you have set those children back by 1 year. Stopping the harsh is not only religious sacrilege, it's also unheard of. So there are so many things involved in what is going on. So my personal opinion would be that we thank them for agreeing to go back to the negotiation table. We urge the federal government to expedite action on negotiations in order to arrive at something that is acceptable, at least acceptable to both parties, or something that is reasonably acceptable to both parties. And then immediately thereafter, since the last minimum wage has expired, as an act of parliament, they should immediately send us an executive bill for us to commence work.
Earlier, the President of the Senate announced a correspondence from President Bola Tinubu seeking confirmation of the appointment of Mr. Adepoju Olumide as the Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency. A day which started with a lot of struggle here at the National Assembly complex. As staff and even the media tried to gain entrance, ended rather calmly. The lawmakers apparently received the news of the suspension of strike with a lot of relief, promising to reconvene on Tuesday to, among other things, consider the report of the Salaries and Allowances Bill 2024 for judicial officers. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Let's tell you, in the meantime, the President has directed the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Edun, to present a financial guide for negotiations towards a new minimum wage within the next 48 hours. That was about yesterday. That disclosure came from the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mr. Mohammed Malagi, after a federal government delegation on the new minimum wage met with the President in Abuja. The Minister explains that the federal government is in support of an affordable and sustainable wage for workers.
We thank Labour that they have suspended, through to their awards last night, they've suspended their strike early this morning. And government on its side, you can see that the President has just summoned a meeting of all those who negotiated on behalf of the federal government, led by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation. We're all there to look at those issues, and then the President has directed the Minister of Finance to do the numbers and get back to him between today and tomorrow, so that we can have some figures ready for negotiation with Labour. Let me say that Mr. President is determined to go with what the committee has said. He's also looking at the welfare of Nigerians. Like I've said earlier, government is not against, it's not an opponent of Labour discussions, it's not an opponent of wage increase, but what is there is that government is always desirous of ensuring that there is a balance between what government pronouncement is and what the realities are on ground, and therefore we'll work assiduously to ensure that whatever we do, whatever promises the government makes will be kept. That's the idea of this meeting. A wage award is not just that of the federal government. Like I mentioned earlier, the subnationals are involved, the organized private sector is involved, the Labour is involved. It was Labour that staged a step out during those proceedings. Now that we have come back to the negotiating table, all of us will work together again assiduously within the next 1 week to ensure that we have a new wage for Nigeria that is acceptable, that is sustainable, that is also realistic for all Nigerians.
Well, where is it going to be at the end of the day is the big question everybody is asking. Government has proposed a 100% increase, and they have said we will do better than 100% at 60,000 naira. Will it end at 200% increase, which is about 90,000, or people are speculating it should be about 100 to 120, and maybe even 150. So everybody is bringing their proposal. It's collective bargaining. That's what it's called in Labour parlance. So, but the good news is that the strike has been relaxed. That's what Labour is saying. They say it's not suspended. I don't know the difference between suspended and relaxed. It appears to be the same, but it's within their rights to argue that. We've been joined on the program to further elaborate on this issue by public affairs analyst, Mr. Sulaiman Aribagbo. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Aribagbo, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So one will wonder, so many things have happened in quick succession. Let me build up a bit in 10 seconds if I can. Just before the strike came, we saw the AGF releasing a statement, literally bordering on subtle threats of no work, no pay. Later on, we saw the Minister of Information and Culture as well as the Minister of State for Labour appealing. Let's go back to that negotiating table. Labour went on with their strike. and barely 48 hours or 24 hours after government invited, in fact, that same day they were invited to the table. And now the president has said, look, I want this on my table in the next 24 to 48 hours. Why did the government allow it to fester to this point, in your view?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the question can also be extended. Why did government even wait till the minimum wage actually expired? The negotiation started, we ought to have started properly with the last administration, knowing that the last minimum wage will expire April this year. And then we allowed it to happen. And then Labour has called for negotiation. You have set up the tripartite negotiating committee, and things dragged. Of course, we know that both sides were a bit unrealistic. Labour was quite unrealistic with their earlier demand, and government also was not ready to play ball, by saying 48,000. The reality is that what government started with is even a non-starter. So it begs the question that why did government even wait for us to suffer this? And my hope is that all sides have learned their lessons, especially government. In this strike, Labour has shown that it can hit where it will hurt the most. Unfortunately, it's the citizens that felt the pinch the most. Yes, government officials may feel it in terms of flight disruptions, but the shutdown of the national grid has a lot of implications, one which we have not even yet started to cost. It's going to take some time to know and it's not just to the economy, but to various aspects of our lives. So why would government have waited for it to get this back? And of course, it's a government that came in with some very stringent policies that really hit on the pockets of Nigerians, on the state of well-being of so many. Whilst we are appreciating that some of these policies were long overdue, but it was also important that government should have put in place a number of things, amongst which should be review of the minimum wage. And this was one of the first promises this government made, even before swearing in, that review of minimum. So why wait for one whole year and you didn't do it until we got to this stage? And this is a question that post this crisis, we need to put to government. We need to enter into the heads of those who are in government. How do they think? Because this crisis definitely could have been averted.
In your view, do you think that the government did a proper social impact assessment on the economic policy fallout, as it were, because of what we're seeing at the moment?
You mean on the fallout of the strike or of their policies?
Fallout, the economic policies of, there are two reforms that brought us here. Removal of fuel subsidy, as well as the floating of the naira. So I'm asking whether you think that there was a proper social impact assessment on those, based on those policies of government.
I mean, it could not be said that the government do not understand the big fallout, the social impact of this. One, because there are a lot of brilliant people around this government, that is one. And even unsolicited advice came from us Nigerians. There are many fora where people analyze what would be the implication of some of the policies that we didn't know about floating the naira, but we knew that this government had to answer the question of removal of subsidy. And even before the swearing in, we have started to give options that we are not saying don't remove the subsidies, but you need to put certain things in place so that it will stop the escalation of inflation, and also it will reduce the social impact on Nigerians, putting some cushioning effect. But unfortunately, the government put the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse, as it were. So unfortunately, I will not say that they do not understand, they did not understand this likely social impact fallout of these policies. But really why the government did it the way they did is still leaves a lot to be understood, and it's quite unfortunate because so many things has happened between May 29th of last year to the present date. And a lot of it, not that it could have been totally averted, but the impact could have been much more minimized. You didn't come up with your CNG, even when government said they were going to be paying 35,000 to government workers, which does not cover the rest of us. Even that, they faltered severally. So many intervention programs that government wanted to do or promised that they were going to do came after the impact.
Yes.
And would have been better if these things had preceded the announcement so that we could have cushioned a lot of things.
My apology. The reason I asked that, because when you're doing scenario planning on things like this, you should be able to an extent, not all the time, envisage situation where Labour may grandstand to the point where they bring the economy to a halt like they did on Monday. That was just a bit of a shaker that everybody felt. And they say, we're giving you 5 days, so get this done. So it's not a huru yet. But let's talk about some legacy issues post-wage increase. We hope that there will be wage increase, but there are consequences to wage increase. It's not just an excitement, it's a responsibility. Because if we don't fix the legacy issues, no matter how much you increase the wage, it's still going to be biting deep into people's pockets. So what should government do going forward that people really feel that they are doing things to move the needle? Because some people have criticized the government of not prioritizing properly. They talk about coastal road, national anthem, and other issues where there are bigger issues to deal with. So I don't know your view on this particular issue.
Thank you very much. On this, I think that we have no choice as a country, not just government. We need to come to discussion around some of the issues that will fall out of this wage increase. Because how many people really work for government? Whatever government agrees to outside of 50,000, 48,000, organized private sector is going to have, especially the manufacturing sector, they are going to have a lot of issues with it. So is there going to be any intervention by government to cushion that? Whatever government does, market is going to react. So we are going to see the inflation in the markets. That's why some of us have been of the school of thought that perhaps labor strategy ought to have changed over the years, because we've realized that each time there's an increase in minimum wage, everything then goes up. So the slogan by labor, which is a fact, that my take-home pay cannot take me home, it always catch up within a month or two after the increase in wage. The reality is that wage becomes non-effectual. So we need to have a conversation around what do we need to. It is inflation that we need to deal with. It is cost of food, cost of housing that we need to deal with. Of course, government do not have any moral standing to deal with cost of housing because it's not building. State governments are not building. Federal government is not building. And the private sector that are doing, private individuals that are doing, you even make things very difficult for them. So you have that on one side. So the cost of social services, the average worker cannot send their kids to school, even to the public school that we say they have not much quality. These are the real issues that we feel that should be handled. Because each time we increase minimum wage, the value of our money goes further down. Inflation takes over, and the rest of us suffer for it. The rest of us whose wages might not necessarily be affected, by the negotiations of labor. So it is important that government understand that it's not just about wage. It's about people being able to eat. It's about people being able to go to the market and buy food. Right now, in middle of April, a basket of tomato was 22,000. Right now, it is 120,000. We know that, of course, rainy season has an impact on it. But then we also know that insecurity is affecting the productivity of our farmers. We know that the cost of transportation from the hinterlands to the cities is affecting the cost of food in the market. These are issues that government needs to deal with as a matter of urgency. The declaration of emergency by the president on food should take effect now. It has not taken any effect thus far.
As we begin to wind up, Mr. Aribabo, do you think, in all honesty, that Labour, as some people have agitated and criticized Labour, should expand the agitation beyond just wage increase? Because, as you've alluded, if you increase wage, the legacy issue doesn't go away. So it's going to bite harder on everybody at the end of the day. Do you think Labour should agitate beyond wage increase? Labour is saying we're not a political party. We're just a union.
This is exactly what I've just said. And I'm not putting the ball in the court of Labour only. The rest of us are, when Labour comes and gives leadership in some of these matters, we need to join them, we need to support them. The issue of education, affordability of good quality education, affordability of decent housing, affordability of decent healthcare. These are the real issues. Cost of food in the market, cost of transportation, piecemeal actions by government at the federal, and even lesser piecemeal intervention by state government will not solve the problem. We need holistic intervention. So we expect that once Labour is through with this issue of increase and we get over this, we should, as a nation, as a people, come together and engage with government on what next to do, because increasing minimum wage does not solve our problem. The legacy issues will always remain there and take over any benefit that the increase in minimum wage was meant to bring about in the first place. So it is important. I am putting that in the court of labor, but I'm also putting it in the court of the rest of us, Nigeria, the media, civil society, and different organizations, different segments of society, even the organized private sector. We need to put this government on its toe. We cannot allow it to relax. If they relax, it's going to be at the detriment of the rest of us. And that is
as we wind down, just your last take. So in your view, what's going to be the fair amount to pay the least worker in the civil service? Some have proposed 90, 100. What's your number? We're playing with numbers now. We're trying to match up 5 days.
Let me say that even whilst I sit here and say that labor's demand of 400 and something is very unrealistic. But when you hear the breakdown where they are coming from, that an average person who has 4 kids needs to do A, B, C, D, even that 400 and something becomes useless. That is why, and if we go back and say, oh, maybe 90,000 is good. If you break it down, 90,000 is actually also not realistic. The government also cannot afford what labor is. And so it's a catch-22 situation. And really, I will skip on the figure. It's really confusing.
So you can see sometimes governance is not easy, right?
It's not easy.
Sulaiman Aribabu is a public affairs analyst. Thank you so much. We hope that Labour and government will come to an agreement so we don't experience what we experienced on Monday. Thank you for coming on the program.
Indeed. Thank you very much for inviting me. Cheers.
Absolutely. Let's talk Rivers politics. The governor, Siminalayi Fubara, has declared that the worst is over in the political crisis that has confronted his government since he became governor a year ago. It says the state government is now working to deliver quality and significant infrastructure upgrade in line with its administration's People's First mantra.
As a government, it is our duty to make sure that we support our own, more especially when you are contributing to peace and development of our states. I'm happy to identify with our brother. I know that the man, nobody is perfect, but in his own little way, he tries as much as he can to make peace his major gift to the people of Okrika. I know I don't need to be told how much he spends to make sure he makes people happy. I identify with you. And I want to appreciate you for standing with us. Like I said, the worst is over. What we are doing today is looking forward and advancing our states. And I'm happy that you are one of my allies.
And now, speaking about appraisal of performance, the Rivers State chapter of the All Progressives Congress has rated Governor Siminalayi Fubara's first year in office, in their words, a total disaster. This assessment is according to the state caretaker chairman, Mr. Tony Okocha, who says after 1 year in office, he's yet to see any project that has been started and completed by the governor. He gave his observation at an interactive session with journalists in Port Harcourt, the state capital, where he debunked claims that he had made a U-turn in his opposition duties.
The administration of Rivers State today, under Governor Siminalayi Fubara, is a sham. Take it on a ratio or a scale of 1 to 10. He bought -0. He bought -0. In other words, it is apt to say that we have relapsed to the days of primitive administration in our political history. There's nothing to show. And I challenge the governor and his handlers and his goons to show one proof, to show me just one project that he initiated, commenced, and completed in 365 days.
Let's head now to Yobe State. The elections for local government are coming up this Saturday, June the 8th, and the police as well as security agencies say they are ready to ensure that everybody goes out and this is going to be a peaceful exercise. That assurance is coming from the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Ahmed Garuba, after a security meeting chaired by the Secretary to the state government. We can also tell you that the federal government is assuring that the successful implementation of its compressed natural gas initiative will save at least $4.4 billion from its total annual spending on fuel importation. This is as the Tinubu-led administration seeks ways to foster sustainable energy solution and reduce carbon emissions while also cushioning the impact of fuel subsidy removal, which has led to a significant increase in the price of fuel and diesel. According to the program director on the presidential CNG initiative, the importance of transition to natural gas will bring about a more affordable, cleaner, safer, and sustainable economy.
That monitoring system has to be smart, it has to be technology-driven, but more importantly, it has to be centered around our sociology, our human behavior. Ultimately, humans are going to be acting in this new natural gas vehicle system we're talking about. We have technicians, we have manufacturers, we have businessmen. We're going to have refueling stations that will be manned by people. People will make decisions. People will take actions. So it's very important that for those of us who are imagining this monitoring system, we build it around the likely actions or activities of these individuals. And that we act in unison, and that we are on one page. And if anything, that's the main objective of this session. This co-creation session is the first of many, I hope, for the system. It is important that we are all on one page, ensuring that the system works better, ensuring that there are no loopholes between those people who are enforcing and those people who are executing.
And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, your usual company. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics.